I thank you for having me here. And I am an associate professor in environmental studies at California State University in Monterey Bay. And I'm also a co-chair of a newly formed Nature RX working group that's part of our president's sustainability committee at CSUMB. So our institution is a Hispanic serving institution. Roughly half of our students are first generation and come from underrepresented minority populations and communities. And we have students who come from the Central Coast region where we are in the state, but also from across California and some from other parts of the country as well. So we're considered a destination campus, and that a lot of people choose to come to this university because of our location. Next slide, please. So what I want to share is a little bit about our work with the Living Community Challenge. So the Living Community Challenge is a framework from the Living Futures Institute. They started out focusing explicitly on buildings and fostering relationships between people and reaffirming our relationships to nature through the built environment. And then they extended that out to also focus on communities, more broadly speaking, of how not just buildings, but what is around them, through the process of biophilic design and ideas of biophilic design. And as part of that, they created a challenge that our campus chose to participate in 2017. We were actually the first college campus to take on the Living Community Challenge and to fold that into our planning and processes for campus development. Next slide. So our campus our university was established with the closing of the Fort Ord military base that was here. In 1994, we transitioned to be a university campus. And so we were one of the largest military bases in the US. And so there's opportunities and there's challenges in transitioning in that kind of land use transition. So some of it's just actual transition of buildings. And one of the opportunities is that we have a lot of open land and open space on our campus. Next slide. So in terms of thinking about our campus, the Living Community Challenge seemed like a great opportunity to consider how we can really enhance nature and nature connection, not only in the spaces that are now part of our campus that are natural or naturalized, but also in the buildings themselves. And we began thinking about this through integration into a research methods course that I am the instructor for. And we had students explore the campus, learn about what the Living Community Challenge is, and make recommendations over time. In the first semester that we did this was also when we were considering whether or not to take on the Living Community Challenge. And so you can see folded into the goals that are on the slide here, two goals that really come from the students' work of thinking about the campus, both from their own perspectives as environmental studies students, but also in interviewing other students from other majors, faculty, and staff. And so two key pieces of this that kind of tie in to, nature as more of a therapeutic and healing space and for renewal are ways of thinking about the building design and connecting the exterior natural environments through biophilic design into the interior built environments. And then the second, and capitalizing on both the ecology as well as the history of the place, were some of the things that students really wanted to see early on and that have become part of our campus planning initiatives as part of this challenge. And then also supporting beautification through art, as well as connections to nature through healthy soil, native plants, and pollinators, and really emphasizing those pieces of our campus. Next slide. So we we have continued to integrate this work into the research methods course every semester. So now I've worked on this over 8 semesters with more than 165 environmental studies students and hundreds of students across campus, with the goal of kind of a continual process of thinking about and evaluating what needs to happen on our campus, what's working well as the campus develops, and areas for continual improvement. Next slide, please. So part of the reason why I want to talk about the class and some of the outcomes from the class is that the process of actually folding this into a class is that it itself provides opportunities for Nature RX through the work that the students do. So the way that I've approached this in the class is to introduce students to the idea of biophilic design. We primarily do that by watching a film that's about an hour long on biophilic design and what that looks like. So they start to really get a visual picture of a variety of ways that this is both important for health and well-being, as well as for promoting mental restoration and learning, as well as connection to the natural environment. And then some of the vocabulary for the built environment about how we can talk about ways that we're seeing this on campus. And then we do a walking tour and kind of scavenger hunt where we have a checklist of biophilic elements, and we walk around the campus and look at sustainability features as well as built environment and natural environment that connect to these concepts. And that in itself, students say they start to develop a real sense of pride in their campus, and they learn about places they didn't know that existed. And so then they start to seek out and kind of building on the last presentation, kind of having their own self-awareness and advocating for themselves that this is actually something that they can have ownership of and integrate into their personal lives, as well as through the curricular activities that we do. In terms of methods, we usually use photo voice behavior mapping and interviews to gather broader, start with the self through photo voice. What do we see that we like on campus? And then evaluating what others are doing on campus. Next slide. So I just wanted to really briefly share with you some of the ways that students talk about this. And the slides are broad, but all, in my mind at least, have linkages to Campus Nature RX ideas. So some of the pictures on this slide, they really like different places for walking, that we have a lot of open space, but they liked areas that were naturalized or nicely landscaped on campus. They talked about not having enough time to kind of go out there and getting away. So they wanted to see more ways that the closer to campus buildings could be enhanced. They also talked a fair amount about liking plants that feel like other places that are familiar to them. And so one of the students in the middle slide there with the agaves, they like seeing that because it reminds them of family in Mexico. And then the third one is also, a lot of students talked about food and edible plants on campus and ways to enhance that, both as a way to just experience nature, but also to address food insecurity issues that are part of our campus community. Next slide. So I think one of the other things that I want to kind of highlight in the findings from some of the students is that a lot of students, especially non-environmental studies majors, talked about how they don't really spend a lot of time outside, but they do really benefit and realize that they're benefiting from the positive aspects of kind of bringing nature, natural light, views of nature into buildings themselves, and that they actually seek out places on campus that do this well, that they recognize that it helps them to focus, to study, to renew themselves while they're working. And so even for students who don't want to necessarily do hands-on activities or go for walks in nature, they really appreciate the places on campus where this is afforded to them. Next slide. So similarly, they really like spaces that blur kind of the indoors and outdoors. So these were photos that students took where they talked about really blurring the boundaries. The photograph on the full right is one of our newest buildings, and there's this courtyard space. It's a U shape, and they really like that both the windows look out onto this space that has a lot of native plants in it, as well as that there's seating and walking areas around this space. And they like that concept a lot and want to see more of that because, as I said, they don't have time to always go out. And so really folding that into the building environment is important to them. Next slide. And then another significant piece that I think we're really going to be building on for the Campus Nature RX working group is ways that they can be involved in realizing sustainability features that also are biophilic design features on campus. So more attention to things like bioswales, natural seating, and other forms of interaction with the campus that can be hands-on and increasing the sustainability of the campus at the same time. Next slide. And then the last thing I think I just want to highlight is that they also really liked physical representations of history, ecology, and culture. And one of the ways that they wanted to see more of this on campus was through murals. Next slide. I'm going to skip this one. And so just capitalizing on the living lab concept and wanting to see more of that, which I already emphasized in the previous slide. And then there's a question about the green frame. So sure, I can answer that while I'm on this slide since there's a green frame on some of the pictures. So photo voice is a method, just taking pictures and then having dialogue about them and the changes that you want to see and having those influence decision makers. And so we do that primarily through both inviting decision makers to our class, as well as sharing reports with them. So we added the green and the red frames to images as a way of adding a layer of communication. So there's some where there are green frames that are indicating things that students like on campus, and then red frames are things that they don't like on campus or that needs improvement. I've been focusing mostly on what they like and want in this presentation, but we have a lot of red slides too, and mostly they look like kind of the older parts of campus that still need more work. Next slide. I think I'm almost out of time, so I just want to wrap up that we are seeing the Living Community Challenge as an opportunity to explore campus planning broadly and how to integrate nature and sustainability into both the built environment and the exterior physical environment. We want to inform design principles that can guide the whole campus planning effort. And then also trying to support emergent projects that emerge from each semester that this happens. So some of those, our students are leading a green roof and living wall independent study, trying to address more systematically food insecurity, and are actually looking at dorm beautification because those are some of our oldest buildings on campus. And so the Campus Nature RX Working Group is a way to actually establish and more across campus to formalize some of the ideas that have come out of the research methods course. I think next slide is my last slide. Yeah, so I see there's some questions and I can't remember the order. So if I'm supposed to answer those now or
we'll have a panel question. Yeah.
Okay.
Right after we have one more presentation, and
okay,
then
perfect.
We'll address those questions. So thank you so much, Victoria. That was fantastic.